I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Dodd-Frank is a disaster. Dodd-Frank purported to be the response to the financial crisis. It unfortunately was and is still. It's still the law of the land. And this notion that it's going to protect us from the next one, I think, is completely misplaced. Why
is it a disaster?
Well, I mean, so Andrew raised Title II, right? The Orderly Liquidation Authority. Right. That is a complete myth that you could in an orderly way, unwind a major financial institution. You couldn't unwind Lehman under Title II. Shouldn't that be the test case, right? And there's one key critical piece that's missing. It depends on comity amongst international nations, right? What happened in Lehman? The British said no. Now, what would happen today? They could say no. There's no treaty in place. There's no enforceable provision under Title II to say.
I doubt there's anything the United States could do unilaterally to make any of that happen. And maybe it's not a bad exercise.
Well, I mean, like if you're going to purport to have an orderly liquidation authority, then get the treaties underneath it.
But is the answer to just raise our hands and say, you know, there's nothing we can do because this is beyond our borders. These are global institutions.
Well, I think quite frankly, the effort should have been placed on amendments to the bankruptcy code. One thing we learned in Lehman, bankruptcy works. It's ugly, but it works. And it's not a process you'd like to go through.
When you heard Barney Frank there talking about that, it was just the multifamily. I didn't really mean it about Fannie and Freddie. I mean, is that changing the way things actually worked in terms of? I mean, there was a big push from the Democratic Party for home ownership and increasing it.
It came from Republicans too.
No, it was under.
It was a little too bipartisan to Becky's point.
Yeah. But so I always thought you got Chris Dodd, friend of Angelo Mazzillo, and you got Barney Frank, the big backer of Fannie and Freddie and guaranteeing all the mortgages. And the bailout bill or the reform bill was named after these two guys. I thought this was like an allegory for how ridiculous the whole situation is. Am I wrong on that?
It does illustrate the underlying cause of the crisis, the mortgage mess.
Right.
It's still a mess, and it's not fixed.
And when you look, though, at the economy today, we had Ray Dalio on at the beginning of the hour. He said we're in the 7th inning. Yeah. What inning do you think we're in? And is there?
He was talking about a debt crisis.
Yeah, but is there an inevitability to another crisis?
Yeah, I think just if you look at history, there is, right? There's going to be another one. Where is it? And you have to go looking for the bubble, right? First there's the bubble, then there's the burst. And so where's the current bubble?
Where is the current bubble?
Well, it's interesting. I caught some of Ray's comments, talking about public financing and things like that. It's a pretty scary place to be right now. You have trillions of dollars of undisclosed liabilities across the country. We experienced some of that bursting in the financial crisis. You had Detroit and you had certain counties in California. But if I had to pick, I would say that in a time of stress, that's going to be a real problematic area.
Because that's not something that we can easily fix.
It's not something you can easily fix, and it's not something you can easily get your head around the magnitude because the disclosure is not there.
Right.
You need disclosure of these things to fully understand the scope and scale. And there's no interest in providing that. The SEC oversees FASB. Public companies have to disclose these things. That's the law of the land. GASB, on the other hand, is a voluntary system.
And no elected official is going to want to push this because it does not help your reelection chances.
Right. I mean, Alan Greenspan was right. Who's going to take away the punch bowl?
Right.
I mean, that's just not possible.
Are you, though, worried more about the banks in a sort of classic run situation like we had last time, or are you more worried about shadow banks and other places that have begun to finance some of this debt?
So I'm very critical of Dodd-Frank. On the flip side, I look for positives. There's, I think, very few, but one is, the capital levels are up, right? Now, the question is, are they optimal? As Joe knows, there's a certain amount of capital that makes sense. Too much is just money coming out of your economy, right? And in a time of stress, I'll tell you, regulatory capital is not what stops a run.